What should you expect from marriage counseling after infidelity? I'm Jonathan Decker with Mended. This is Ask a Therapist, and I'm going to guide you through the process of what this is going to look like and how you're going to put your relationship back together. One thing that I discovered early on in my career is that you need to know exactly what you're looking for when it comes to working with a therapist, because therapists specialize in different things. I don't, for example, take on clients with schizophrenia because that's not my area of expertise. I refer them to somebody who is specifically trained to deal with that. I also don't do a lot of children's therapy, play therapy, because that's a specific field of therapy. I specialize in trauma therapy and in healing from betrayal trauma, as do our entire team here at Mended. So if you go with a counselor that's not specifically trained in your unique need, it may not go especially well.
You're his therapist. No, I'm not his therapist.
We need to sit down and talk.
It may really blow up in your face. I had a dentist remove my wisdom teeth, which is normally something that an orthodontist would do. But the dentist owed my dad money. And so he was paying it off through pulling out my wisdom teeth. And he wasn't legally allowed to knock me out and put me under. He gave me a local anesthetic, but I was awake when they were pulling my wisdom teeth. And I could hear the saw, brr, brr, brr. I could feel the pressure. I could smell the smoke. And then they're yanking and pulling my teeth out. The whole thing was very traumatic, even though I couldn't actually feel the pain. And that's because I didn't go to an orthodontist who specialized in it. Right? It's the same thing with therapy. The fact is, a lot of couples whose relationships have been rocked by an affair, by infidelity, go to a therapist and just hope for the best. And it ends up being very painful or even disastrous because they're not seeing somebody who's qualified and trained and experienced in this specific field of betrayal trauma.
Oh, couples therapy isn't going well?
And I saw this early on. I wasn't having a ton of success with helping people heal from infidelity, but neither were any of my colleagues. I mean, it is a brutal, difficult thing to work through. And that's when I'm like, this can be better. We're gonna have a higher success rate than we're having. Across the board, it's less than 50%, right? Less than 50% are staying together of these couples. And so I got specific and unique training in this that is evidence-based and research-based, and that works. And we've been doing this for years now. Over 90% of couples who work with us and finish our program stay together. So what does that look like? What does experienced, qualified help in healing from infidelity look like? It looks like somebody who understands what betrayal trauma is and just how close it is to what we consider trauma, period, right? We often look at trauma and we think of near-death experiences. We look at, I witnessed something horrific, or I experienced something where my life was in danger. And so we think soldiers and firefighters and police officers, or people who live in war zones, or people who live in really, high crime areas. We think that's trauma. But betrayal? When your partner turns outside of the relationship for needs that should only be met inside the relationship, that's traumatic. Because what is trauma? It's believing that your world is safe and then discovering that it's not. And that can lead to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, where you have nightmares, where you have triggers, where you have emotional swings, where you are hypervigilant and always on the lookout, where you can't rest, can't feel at peace. And in this case, you want to trust, but you don't know how, because you're afraid that trust will lead to further pain. You need a counselor who understands that. What does therapy look like? In our case, you come in for an 80-minute session, an hour and 20 minutes. It's called a clarity session. During that clarity session, your therapist, member of our team, is going to evaluate your needs, is going to talk with you about your history, is going to let you tell your story. And they're going to do it in a loving, non-judgmental way. With compassion, yes, for the victim of the betrayal trauma, but perhaps controversially, with some for the betrayer as well. Not for their actions, not for their behavior, but a lot of betrayers carry intense guilt and heavy shame and struggle to see the good in themselves. And they feel defined by this choice. The fact is, none of us wants to be defined by our worst behaviors. None of us wants to be defined by our worst choices. We all want to be better, strive to be better. Unless, that person doesn't. If that person shows up to therapy and they don't want to stop having the affair or stop seeing that person, or that person shows up to therapy and they're saying, well, I said I was sorry and I admitted that it was wrong and I stopped, so now you're just holding a grudge. In that case, therapy would have to focus early on helping the partner who had the affair to recognize, no, this is a trauma, and it's a trauma that you caused. A lot of times people show up to therapy only partially taking accountability. Yes, I shouldn't have had an affair. I wish that I hadn't done it. But you drove me away. You drove me to it. You made me feel lonely. You made me feel attacked. You made me feel criticized, right? You made me feel pushed away.
Life with you was joyless.
And the fact is, it's two separate things. We all have to be accountable for our own behavior. So there's one, what was going on in the relationship that was difficult. And there's two, having the affair. Because the fact is, if I cross the line into infidelity and dishonesty, that's not cause and effect. Nobody made me do that. That's a moral choice. I crossed a moral line into an immoral behavior. And I have to own that. I don't get to blame that on somebody else, because there are people who feel lonely in their marriages. There are people who feel hurt, who feel pushed away, who feel attacked and criticized, who don't cheat.
Did you cheat on me?
And so the first step, if the partner who had the affair ever wants the betrayed partner to see how much they were hurting or take accountability for their own behavior, first and foremost, therapy is going to focus on helping the person who had the affair to take full ownership of making that choice and for the damage that they've done. Now, some people show up already accountable, already this is all on me, like the affair is all on me, in which case we start rolling. We really start moving. Therapy can progress much more rapidly when people show up humble and accountable. Couples therapy is going to look like helping the person who had the affair have compassion and understanding for the pain that they cause. A lot of time the shame is so intense that they want it just to all go away. This is the worst thing I've ever done. So if you would just accept my apology and that I'm not doing it anymore and forgive me, and let's just focus on having a great relationship now, that would be wonderful. And the fact is, it's not that easy. And so that's the focus with the person who had the affair. With the person who was betrayed, therapy looks a lot like you need to have a voice.
Because you need to have your voice.
You can't bury this. You can't not speak your mind to protect your partner, or conversely, you can't go so far the other way where you are harshly attacking them, being cruel and mean and nasty, even though they deserve it.
And I used to defend you.
It's helping you focus on the difference between forgiveness and trust, being open to your partner earning trust, and you practicing forgiveness, which is just taking care of yourself, which is when all this bile and bitterness and anger and hatred come up that you, every time it comes up over and over and over, you let it go through forgiveness. Therapy is going to look like, I'm not going to lie to you, it's going to kick your butt. Coming back from something this big is not an easy task. It's not a couple sessions. In our case, it's 5 months. It's a 5-month program, 3 months to work on healing from infidelity, 2 months to work on the relationship itself. What we have is a program that combines online courses with counseling. So that in between your therapy sessions, instead of going to therapy and then picking up the next week where you left off, you pick up here. Because in between, you've been learning. In between, you've been watching these online video courses, and instead of sitting there while your therapist teaches you, your therapist doesn't go into professor mode. You've learned it at home. You've already acquired this knowledge. Now it's all about application. Now it's all about troubleshooting. Now it's all about where are we getting hung up. Your therapist is going to balance compassion and empathy and seeing the best of you with pushing you to grow. In the case of the person who cheated, sometimes that's gonna be shaking you loose of your ways of thinking that are keeping you trapped and keeping your marriage from healing. In the case of the person who was betrayed, it's going to help you to not withdraw, to not be harsh and nasty, but to be truthful and direct. It's going to look like identifying how this happened in the first place. How did we go from I will never cheat and I'm totally faithful to my partner to now I'm doing this and I'm keeping it a secret? So that we can intervene way up here and redirect way up here instead of way down here when all that happens. It's going to look like, honestly, a reboot. I like to compare it to a phoenix, right? Like in Harry Potter, Fawkes the Phoenix, who ignites and turns into ash and then he's reborn. You kind of have to let the old version of your marriage die. The old version of this relationship has to just be done. We're rebooting. And that doesn't mean we forget what happened in the past. What it does mean is that the process of therapy is, I'm working to be a better person for you. I broke your heart. I devastated you. And I want to not be that person anymore. I want to be who you deserve. I want to be who you need. And I want to do everything that you need in order to heal. Sometimes, the person who cheated likes to talk about the old version of them by a different name, like Thomas and Tom, right? Well, that was Thomas. You're dealing with Tom now. And I don't want to oversimplify that, but we're looking at a rebirth and a renewal. A lot of people say when they finish the program, it's like I'm married to the same person, but it's a different marriage. It's like I'm on my second marriage, right? Even though I'm with the same person. This process is grueling. The first half in particular, we'll kick your butt, because that's where we're cleaning out the wound. And that's where we're focused on making sure this never happens again, and understanding how it happened, and working through barriers to accountability and barriers to forgiveness, and how to earn back trust. On the back half, we start to get into the fun stuff, which is we're doing a lot better. How do we keep this going? And how do we connect again? And the fact is, when we talk about trauma, you may have triggers years later. The idea is that they happen less frequently and that they're less intense, but that instead of a year from now, 2 years from now, if your partner is triggered going, oh gosh, I thought we were through this. Will you ever forgive me from this? Instead of that, it's, I'm so sorry I hurt you. I'm so sorry I made this choice. I'm so sorry that I did this to you, and I want you to know that I choose you and that I am, if you'll allow me to borrow a religious term, I'm repentant. I'm changed and I'm changing. Now, if you've enjoyed this video, I want to direct you to another one. How long should I date before getting married? That's another Ask a Therapist. And if what we're doing here at Mended Light is meaningful to you, please like, subscribe, click the bell to make sure that you see our new videos when they crop up, and share us with your friends. We are trying to help heal relationships and individuals all across the world from trauma, betrayal, and otherwise. And we need your help to reach those people. And most importantly, let your light shine, because we need it. I'll see you next time. Oh, and here comes the video. It's the next one. Keep learning, keep growing, do it. Do it now. Do it.